You may ask, why am I doing this? We all know that there is something wrong with the system. Each one knows this according to their own experiences. The system has not served man or the planet. The system has harmed people and harmed the planet. Welcome to the Southern Africa Jural Assembly and Committee's Common Law Education Sessions. We are very grateful that you have chosen to learn along with us. This video audio session is titled Emancipation Explained. From the sea back to the land, from fiction back to reality. Robinson Crusoe gets stuck on a desert island. The courts presume he is dead and turns his estate over to his local government because he died intestate with no next of kin. The local government goes hog wild and spends against his estate until they can borrow no more. At the last minute, Robinson comes home and says, "What the bleep?" This is where we are at now, folks. This quotation was shared by Anna von Reitz, a common law expert and judge from Alaska in America. We will now read in our non-disclaimer. Without prejudice to the living, there can be no such thing as a disclaimer because the reading and use of this educational material is by your own free will and choice, and each one of us is wise enough to follow our own counsel and responsible for our own actions and outcomes thereof. The choice is ours and ours alone. Therefore, no disclaimer is necessary. Govern yourselves accordingly. You may ask, why am I doing this? We all know that there is something wrong with the system. Each one knows this according to their own experiences. The system has not served man or the planet. The system has harmed people and harmed the planet. First off, this system has its origins in the ancient occult. Occult means hidden, in this case in plain sight. One can see their symbols, colors, and wordplay everywhere. Now, at its root, this is merely the continuance of an ancient system rooted in occult, Satanism, and black magic, and the masses of humanity are hypnotized under a spell binding, and begins with the written word. It is no coincidence that words are spelled. Now, it is a well-established principle of soul law, S-O-U-L, soul law, as well as other laws that, referring to the maxim, in the same manner that a thing is bound, in the same manner it is unbound. So in effect, one is unbinding evil and binding the good to prevail. You are welcome to download the PDF titled Principles of Common Law. Read it and learn and apply the maxims contained therein. This is the easiest way to understand what law is. There are a number of maxims found under the heading entitled Bound and Loosed. You will be able to find these maxims and the PDF titled Principles of Common Law on our website, Gift of Truth and South African Sovereigns. Referring to the biblical Matthew 16:19, "And I will give to you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatsoever you shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatsoever you shall loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." And the common law is rooted in the teachings of Jesus and his soul redemption process. This is a physical redemption process without having to opt out of the system completely, whilst we are building an alternative one. You are then in fact reclaiming misspent energy and doing good with it. Legally, one gets emancipated at the age of 21. However, in fact, that is when we really do become enslaved in the current system. When one comes of age and you get a key to the estate. However, this emancipation process separates the individual the binding of the two, again into the fiction strawman person debtor transmitting utility in the C jurisdiction, and the living woman or man creditor agent on the land jurisdiction. And one learns how to deal with the system at arm's length as the third-party agent restricting the liability to the strawman. This emancipation process is a preemptive action so that if you ever have to appear before their courts, you have notified them beforehand of your jurisdiction to which they have consented by not responding and remaining silent. Also, one is nullifying their fake contracts and replacing them with lawful ones, and one is letting them know that we know what they are up to and we are educating them about it. In the right hands, emancipation is a shield against pirates and highwaymen and a sword to pierce the corporate veil. Those who have educated and informed themselves can usually stop them before it gets to court or get the case thrown out. Also, this process of emancipation is the first step towards people's sovereignty, direct self-governance, self-determination, and building an alternative, amazing model that makes the present one obsolete. The people shall now govern. And part of this new parallel alternative model and system by the people is a people's court. So emancipation is the first step we all take towards our bright and abundant future. Have you thought of the word unincorporating? Virtually everything has become incorporated into the bankrupt C jurisdiction over the last few generations. Our mission is to reclaim it along with all the credit and move it back to the solvent, unincorporated land jurisdiction, back to reality. Sovereignty equals unincorporated. Always remember that, if nothing else. Emancipation is a restraint against tyranny. It is also a status correction from being deemed a fiction person with no rights to a living people with pre-existing creator-given, natural, unalienable, inalienable, non-derogable rights which cannot ever be taken away by anyone without your informed consent and unless you give them up yourself. The sole purpose of a government is supposed to be to ensure the protection of your rights and to provide you with services, not to exploit you and certainly not to harm you. It is for this reason why the people around the world and in Southern Africa and Africa are standing up, standing together, saying enough is enough. And now we, the people, are doing it for ourselves. The emancipation process offered by the Southern Africa Jural Assembly is adapted from Anaphon rights from the American States Assemblies for uniformity and recognition. And it goes without saying that the emancipation process means nothing without fully comprehending jurisdiction, what your rights are, and how you seemingly give a semblance of consent to RSA Incorporated agents. We recommend an hour a day of education to keep the pirates at bay. The emancipation process is possibly not for everyone. It first needs to resonate deeply within your soul, your heart, and your mind that this is something you wish to do. This emancipation process is the banking and law aspect of building an alternative society, including your self-governance. We have many other committees available if you are interested to volunteer and join us on this path of building our bright and abundant future. For a list of committees that are active and to volunteer, please do visit our website or alternatively send an email to info@sajuralassembly.co.za. We welcome you. We are now going to cover each individual emancipation document. The recording cover sheet. The main purpose of the cover sheet is to establish your jurisdiction or venue and to inform the recipient what the attached documents are all about. We do recommend you download a copy of the 4th edition of Black's Law Dictionary. The best way to understand a word fully is to download the dictionary and to do a word search from front to back, and to summarize the relevant definitions and maxims. The UPU. Before the last 2012 bankruptcy reorganization, the UPU, or Universal Postal Union, was the overarching jurisdiction to convey things between countries without restriction in peace and in wartime. So you will notice that there are some other groups trying to claim and use the Postmaster General Office and the UPU system. But as we refer to Anna von Reitz's guidance, she says there is no use trying to revive a broken system, rather build an alternative one that makes the old one obsolete. There is a wonderful quote by Buckminster Fuller. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Nevertheless, we use registered mail where possible, otherwise via email in accordance with the Electronic Communications Act, but make sure you have proof that it was sent in the form of a notification. What is the law of the land versus law of the sea? For a list of words commonly used in the corporate, merchant, naval, sea jurisdiction and their land jurisdiction word counterparts, please visit our website and download the PDF with the title, What is Law? And begin using the land jurisdiction words. For example, in the cover sheet, one will notice the words district and town. Those are both land jurisdiction words, as opposed to city and province. Those are both sea jurisdiction words. We, as sovereign emancipated living men and women, will use the land jurisdiction words such as district or town. In the emancipation documents, the grantor is the straw man and the living woman and man is the grantee. A grantor is synonymous with settler, founder, and donor. Again, go and have a look in Black's Law Dictionary for further information. What is the CUSIP number? The red alphanumeric number on the back of your unabridged birth certificate is in fact a CUSIP number, which one can use to find where and for how much the birth certificate is trading, such as at fidelity.com. The CUSIP number is in fact a financial number. A quote from Judge Dale spills the beans. Note: all tradable securities must be assigned a CUSIP number before it can be offered to investors. Birth certificates and social security applications are converted into government securities, assigned a CUSIP number, grouped into lots, and then are marketed as a mutual fund investment. Upon maturity, the profits are moved into a government CESTUQ trust, and if you are still alive, the certified documents are reinvested. It is the funds contained in the CESTUQ trust that the judge, clerk, and county prosecutor are really after or interested in. This trust actually pays all of your debts, but nobody tells you that because the elite consider these assets to be their property, and the Federal Reserve System is responsible for the management of those investments. Social Security, SSI, SSD, Medicare, and Medicaid are all financed by the trust. The government makes you pay taxes and a portion of all your wages supposedly to pay for these services, which they can borrow at any time for any reason, since they cannot access the CESTUQ trust to finance their wars or to bail out Wall Street and their patron corporations. For further and more in-depth education on how this all works, we recommend you visit the website and download the PDF from the manuals page. Take your time to read this. It's a great way to do common law education. What is National Treasury? The Minister of Finance, in the US it is the Secretary of the Treasury, is supposed to be your banker and administrating your own name trust, of which the identity number is also the bank account number. He swore an oath not to commit any fraud. But we are all being swindled, and there is no statute of limitations in the cases of fraud. Remember the powerful maxim, fraud vitiates everything, which means fraud undoes everything. No fraud, once it has been exposed and revealed, can stand in truth at all. Fraud cancels all contracts. The debt the Minister of Finance made in your name and liability he incurred is his to sort out. Only the credit due is yours. With regards the UCC law merchant and bills of exchange. With doing your emancipation process and documents, you are telling the Minister of Finance that you know it's all merely UCC law merchant bills of exchange fraud. That's why he and SARS, South African Revenue Services, and the Master of the High Court are also getting notified. They are all in on this scam. The UCC is the Uniform Commercial Code, mainly used by the US. As we are still a Dutch-English Crown dependency or colony, our Bills of Exchange Act is styled after the English BOE Act. Using bills of exchange, they are getting paid via backdoor clearinghouses, whilst billing you again via the front door. We are paying up to 20 times for the same service. We actually live in a prepaid system. However, bear in mind that the Federal Reserve System is a giant debt-based Ponzi scheme operating under reorganization bankruptcy, which makes the UCC and bills of exchange fraudulent. Because of this, we cannot be party to the fraud, so we are not doing an A4V, accepted for value, endorsement. We are in fact doing an insurance claim by instead writing accepted for indemnified value. You can also learn some more about the bills of exchange by joining one of our bills of exchange workshops. Please do visit our website for further information and have a look at the bills of exchange page. What is the Acknowledgement, Acceptance and Deed of Reconveyance? This emancipation document is to move your and your offspring's names from the sea jurisdiction to the land jurisdiction. Remember, it is all about jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is the limits and boundaries of the various laws and the authority, capacity, power, or right of a particular court to act and to decide in a particular case. At birth, your given names were meant to be recorded on the land, that is the land jurisdiction, but were instead fraudulently registered in the corporate sea jurisdiction. Before birth registration, names were recorded in the family Bible and a family tree was kept. Living people trade at national soil jurisdiction and international land jurisdiction, whereas corporations engage in commerce at international sea jurisdiction. Colonel Edward Mandelhouse is attributed with giving a very detailed outline of the plans to be implemented to enslave the American people and eventually all other people around the world. He stated in a private meeting with Woodrow Wilson, the American president from 1913 to 1921, the following: "Very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property, that's you and your children, in a national system designed to keep track of the people and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat-to-paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer being able to work and earn a living. They will be our chattels, property, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading, birth certificate, to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser. For not one man in a million could ever figure our plans, and if by accident one or two should figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debts to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Without realizing it, every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption, and we will employ the high office presidency of our dummy corporation, the USA, to foment this plot against America. As we have all come to realize, this terrible evil and corruption and fraud spread across the world. Mankind is meant to be sacred, not to be given a value. And so too is Mother Earth, the water and the natural world, all sacred. An important maxim: a sacred thing does not admit of valuation. The moment a commercial value is given to something, it is no longer sacred. This is a key tool the evil system uses to make us party to their fraud and corruption. The emancipation process is the first step towards correcting this, and one is unincorporating by moving or conveying everything registered in the sea back to the land. One is changing jurisdiction and revenuing. Learning how to challenge jurisdiction is key in a lawful defense. It is important to note that the South Africa or South African Republic, written in sentence case, is the original organic unincorporated state, whereas, written all in capital letters, the Republic of South Africa is the incorporated corporation derived from the organic one. And the original South Africa is a trust of which we are beneficiaries as minors, trustees as adults, and donors as grandparents. Instead, our government has been hijacked and all departments corporatized, and we are now customers and clients to profit off of. Can you see the sleight of hand? It is up to us to claim it back and to correct and right the wrongs that have been done. Moving on to the Certificate of Assumed Name. In our emancipation document, the Certificate of the Assumed Name describes that Mary Jane Doe in capital letters is the legal fiction strawman person and is giving you, Mary Jane Doe in sentence case, permission to engage in commerce using its name. Bear in mind that up until this point, Mary Jane Doe in capital letters is deemed an asset and property of the RSA Incorporated, and RSA Incorporated is deemed an asset and property of the United Nations International Monetary Fund Incorporated. It does not belong to you, your capital name, until you claim it. This document, the Certificate of Assumed Name, is also intended to correct the trust fraud that accompanies the name fraud. You also become the holder in due course and entitlement holder, which are definitions found in the UCC and Bills of Exchange Amendment Act 56 of the year 2000. A writ of habeas corpus is an order from one court to another to release the body of an arrested woman or man into the custody of, for example, the sheriff of the People's Court. However, before one gets arrested, one must invoke one's right to be deemed innocent until proven guilty, so not to be arrested, and to appear by oneself. Further, the Certificate of Assumed Name document establishes that you, Mary Jane Doe, in sentence case, is in a foreign jurisdiction to theirs and therefore not subject to their rules. You are in the land jurisdiction as Mary Jane Doe's sentence case, and they are in the sea jurisdiction. Oil and water do not mix ever. Of course, it is helpful for you to know all their tricks that they might try to get you to consent and move into their jurisdiction. Some additional information. At birth, a certificate of live birth is registered by a probate court. You will notice it is stamped by the registrar of the probate court. By legal definition, probate means that the last will of a deceased person has been registered and not a living one. A legal description of probate. Originally relating to proof, afterwards relating to the proof of wills. The act or process of proving a will. The proof before an ordinary surrogate register or other duly authorized person that a document produced before him for official recognition and registration and alleged to be the last will and testament of a certain deceased person is such in reality. A judicial act or determination of a court having competent jurisdiction establishing the validity of a will. Then, on top of this, a trust is registered in your name, and because you don't claim it before you are 7 years old, not only were you declared dead at birth, but also declared missing at sea, according to the CESTU-QV Act of 1666, and then the rats lay claim to your estate. This fraud scheme has involved both bankruptcy and probate fraud on a massive scale and has been carried out by private business enterprises such as members of the bar legal system, central banks, national treasury, receiver of revenue services, and more. And this has happened not only in South Africa, but across the world. These undeclared foreign agents have operated under colour of law for decades. The bar members use law of the sea on our land and in open violation of international law, being way beyond the 200 nautical mile limit for sovereign states, disallowing their presence on our soil. These bar associations have misrepresented themselves as harmless professional service organizations, whilst operating private bill collection agencies disguised as public courts, all without license, proper identification, or consent. The revenue services, as well as RSA Incorporated agents and departments, have operated in a similar lawless and clandestine manner. Employees have misrepresented themselves as part of our lawful government, when in fact they have been totally independent private bill collectors operating as privateers on our shores and routinely committing fraud and inland piracy against citizens, and also committing bills of exchange fraud by selling the bills through private clearinghouse syndicates, getting paid from our trusts for the services, and then double billing us again from our pockets in the process. The correct application of the Bills of Exchange Act can end inflation and debt. With the emancipation document titled Act of Expatriation, you are revoking your corporate C citizenship, note the C terms, and claiming your lawful, organic, original, unincorporated republic, trust, nationality, and land. If we go to the Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition and look at the description of expatriation, we find the voluntary act of abandoning one's country and becoming the citizen or subject of another. So with the document, the Act of Expatriation, we are voluntarily abandoning the fraudulent corporate fiction RSA Incorporated, and we are becoming the national of the original organic unincorporated republic. A famous quote by Gandhi said, "Civil disobedience becomes a sacred duty when the state has become lawless and corrupt, and a citizen who barters with such a state shares in its corruption and lawlessness." The time is now to stop this. The time is now to undo the wrongs and to right everything, and to bring back the power peacefully and with honor and integrity to the people. Let's look at the cancellation of power of attorney. The legal system makes a lot of assumptions and presumptions about you and your offspring and your property, such as that you are incompetent to manage your own affairs, so the master of the High Court will act as your trustee, that your offspring are wards of the court, and so on. There is an important maxim to consider here that says, all things are presumed to be lawfully done until proof be made to the contrary. So they presume their piracy is lawful until you come along and say, hang on a minute. In its simplest form, an emancipation can simply be a power of attorney from your straw man, Mary Jane Doe in capital letters, giving you, Mary Jane Doe in sentence case, power of attorney to act on its behalf and in its name, and to conduct all its business and legal affairs as agent and or independent trustee if needs be. This also separates you from the straw man. In that case, make sure your autograph of the living man or woman, which is Mary Jane Doe in sentence case, is different to Mary's signature, and that is Mary in capital letters. So make sure your straw man signature is different from your living man or woman's signature. Remember, even a common law court will frown upon you if you try to use the emancipation process as a get-out-of-jail-free card after the fact. It must be preemptive. It's all about remaining in honor and shining a light on their dishonor. In most cases, when you do this with integrity, they will back off. And now we come to the paramount claim of life and estate document. We are presently living in an age where if the powers that be had their way, we would have been the last natural man to walk the earth. The event that took place in 2020 exposed some of the genetic experimentation that has been going on in many biolabs, where human tissue is being used. Much of this comes from the hospitals. The question is, what are the legal implications if, for example, a clone was to be made of you? Who gets your estate? The corporations, of course, the way things were set out. This paramount claim of life is to nullify such things resulting from the tampering of your DNA. With regards to the mandatory notice, take note that courts of South Africa are in fact admiralty courts. Think of the VOC, the Dutch East India Company, and their sea charters upon which Roman Dutch law is founded. These were merchant naval ships operating on trade routes, and the Cape was a way station to resupply. They operated under the law of the sea. Vessels at sea have flags that identify them, and if you in your dinghy have not struck a flag, it is assumed that you are part of the mothership HMS RSA Incorporated, and therefore under its rules. Now, some companies may choose not to sail under their country's flag if, for example, their country is at war. It is risky, so they may choose to sail under a flag of convenience. Some operating between warring nations may choose to sail under neutral flags, or their country may be neutral, such as Switzerland. There's a good maxim that applies here. That is, free ships make free goods. So in effect, with the mandatory notice, you are telling the Admiralty, leave my vessel alone. I am flying under my own flag, under my own rules. If you read the Foreign States Immunities Act 87 of 1981, specifically Section 2, which is general immunity from jurisdiction, it is clear that you must stay out of their courts. If you take a dispute to their courts, then you automatically grant them jurisdiction and you relinquish your sovereignty. Those South African tribes that have given up their tribal authorities for magistrates' courts have lost their sovereignty. European South Africans lost their sovereignty when they gave up their jury courts in the 1950s. The tribal monarchs gave up their sovereignty when they accept monthly salaries from government. There are many ways in which the system gets us to subject ourselves, and we always give up more in the long run than the benefit we receive. Sovereignty can only be achieved by being independent in every aspect of your life. Settle your own disputes, generate your own power, grow your own food, or trade with someone who does. Therefore, you must produce something essential that is tradable and preferably in high demand. Become self-sufficient and love and treat your neighbor as you would wish to be treated yourself. It is very wise to look at the law of peace versus the law of war. Because courts of South Africa are admiralty courts, they follow the law of war. Courts are battlefields without the blood, where adversaries are pitted against each other and the guilty are punished. In contrast, arbitration and restorative justice, as put forward by common law, are more peaceful processes. Ancient books teach about the law of peace: turn the other cheek, forgive trespassers and debtors, charity, and love thy neighbor. If you are competent enough and confident enough, you can divert any case to the law of peace. You can go and learn more about this by visiting our website and search for the Restorative Justice tab, as well as the PDF of Law of Peace Volume 1 found on the What is Law tab. The Southern Africa General Assembly always abides by the law of peace, and we conduct ourselves with honor, integrity, and love. Coming now to the baby deed of land recording. This document is to record the baby's live birth. The baby deed also nullifies the fraudulent certificate of live birth, which in fact is a death certificate issued against the afterbirth, and then you don't seem to exist. The baby deed of land recording is completed by the mother or father doing their emancipation process and documents if the child is younger than 21 years of age. If the children are 21 and older, they must complete a full emancipation process document set themselves. This brings us to the completion of the explanation for our emancipation documents and process. We trust that you've gained some knowledge through this, are feeling empowered and excited about this bright and abundant future that you are soon to be participating in. So do your emancipation and your status correction. Bring yourself back to the land. This is where we, the people, are standing. As we, the people across this country, continent, and planet are pulling together, standing together, co-creating something brand new by, for, and of the people. Remember, We need you. If you feel in your heart and soul that emancipation is the right thing to do, join us as South African sovereigns and the Southern Africa Jural Assembly, and come and do your emancipation process with us. We have a loving and kind team to be able to support you, regular public education sessions, and a land recording and publishment office that will be able to make your emancipation deed a public record. This now concludes our educational session on emancipation and the explanation of the documents and process. We look forward to welcoming you to our public Zoom educational sessions, and we invite you to subscribe to all our social media channels and website. With so much gratitude from our hearts to yours, we wish you success and joy on this journey towards our bright and abundant future. We are grateful to be walking the path with you.